Welcome to MSP 1337. I'm your host, Chris Johnson, a show dedicated to cybersecurity challenges, solutions, a journey together, not alone. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of MSP 1337. I'm joined this week by Eric Hanson of Inland Productivity Solutions. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Thanks, Chris.
So I did an episode not so long ago. We called it a doozy of a story. And I think this might trump the doozy of a story. I did an episode called the pig butchering scam. That is a doozy of a story. Our conversation as we led up to let's record this before we forget it is
is there an option for me to forget it?
Right. Is the combination in some respects of previous stories that have been on this show and kind of putting them all together and saying, you figure it out. You tell us, was it the pipe wrench or a candlestick in the dining room? Like, this feels like Clue. And I think I hope our audience will maybe give us some feedback, because I think there's some interesting. We want this to be successful at the end of the day, right? Like, if as you tell the story, I think what you shared with me, it sounds cool, and it sounds like a unique approach to, well, I don't want to give it away. Please tell us the story, and I will try as much as I can to not just stop you in the middle of it, to interrupt and go, what?
Well, no, I mean, you're certainly welcome to stop me in the middle of it. So we have a client that does some development work, as in real estate development work. And traditionally, they have sought investors, generally people they know, who will come in. Okay, yeah, I'll throw $500,000 at that. I'll throw $1 million at that. So then, they collect a big pile of money, call it, 30, 40 million bucks to go and build
chump change.
Right. To go build this project. It's like 20 people that know each other, and they all threw in 10 million bucks
angel investment's not so far off from that. Yeah.
So, but I mean, these guys have a known track record. They build good projects, they put out a good product, and have been very successful.
But this isn't their first rodeo. Not
their first rodeo by a long shot. But in order to do bigger projects, you need to find more money.
This is like Vegas, right? If you want to win big in blackjack, you don't start with $20, $30 and expect to go home anytime soon.
Exactly.
Or go home.
Or you better be really, really good.
Yeah, every time.
Every time. You need to win every hand.
Yes.
So they came to us after they had engaged a vendor who sells a platform that is used to provide this service, I guess we'll say.
But for lack of a better word, we can call it, like you said it before, like this is like crowdfunding or Kickstarter or GoFundMe
on a massive dollar scale. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. This is, I don't think there's a whole lot of Kickstarter stuff that, gets $100 million of investment.
No, because that's a whole different, like, this is not in my garage.
Right. Well, yeah. And those things that we typically think of as crowdfunded, there's usually at least the promise of a
reward.
Right.
Almost a guarantee, right? Like, worst case scenario, you're going to get a t-shirt.
Right. You're going to get a t-shirt, or you're going to get whatever this gizmo is that I need $100,000 to get off the ground.
Reminds me of Gremlins.
In fact, I'm using one of those gizmos right now that I bought that very way.
Nice.
But I didn't risk a lot of money. So,
right. Disposable income aside, there is still risk with disposable income that you may just carry around the shame of it happening. So this is on that scale.
I'm not going to tell anyone.
Right.
But yeah, so is $150 loss going to change my life? No,
No.
it's it, so that's not a big risk. So these are much larger bets. This is $1 million, a couple of $1 million.
So walk us
And
through the biggest part that I'm still wrapping my head around, and this is obviously why I asked you to tell it again, because there's no way I could tell it, is step through what I sort of said is like the supply chain to see this happen or materialize.
Right. So what the supply chain looks like is you have this vendor that sells this crowd funding project or
Right.
thing.
It's a project, which is the whole
platform. That was the term they used, platform.
But what's really interesting about what you're describing and the intent behind this is about a project of some significant proportion, whether it's a platform or we're going to build the next Twin Tower type thing. This is a big reward for what is big investment, but it's done with lots of people involved to help reduce the impact to any one participant.
Correct. Right. So this, the idea as I understand it is that, a smaller investor, the guy that's got $50,000 or $100,000 typically would never get invited to the table on one of these deals. And the return could be quite good, 40-50% return. So if I can take my $100,000, turn it, park it for a couple of years in this project and returns 150,000, that's a pretty good deal. Now I got 150,000 to go do the next one. So I liked the idea. I like the idea of what they're doing. They are providing an opportunity for smaller, though not small, investors to participate.
And we've seen this before, I think, just not put together like this. I think technology is enabling something that, the risk of multiple companies coming together to fund something, we call those investment groups, right? Right.
I mean, that's right. That's a thing. So none of that is really where my involvement came in. My involvement came in, hey, we'd like you to look at the security of this thing. Okay.
And this thing is more than a thing, right? Like there's things.
Yes, there's things. So there's this platform, and then the platform has plugins, and the plugins do things like, if I'm Joe investor trying to come into this thing.
This is like if then that's tied into a bunch of different things.
Yeah, it's so let me keep going with the story.
Yeah, sorry.
So no, that's all good. So I put in my information. Hey, I want to do this. I've got 100,000 to invest. And there are rules about, not allowing people to invest the only $100,000 they have or the $50,000 they have, and now they can't pay their mortgage. And the platform then talks to another platform through an API to see, hey, does this potential investor actually have the wherewithal to do this? And then that platform sends back some information and says, yeah, they do. Or, nah, this is probably not for us. So if it comes back and says, yeah, they maybe have that wherewithal, the platform then talks to another platform to do some further vetting of that potential investor. Then it comes back. So we've already got three pieces.
Right. We're starting to sound like politics.
Where we've handed this information off. Then it comes back and, okay, we're actually gonna have a human put some eyes on this to decide, yeah, okay, does this all make sense?
Right.
So, when you register to become involved in this, it has you create a username and password, and then collects a bunch of information about you, potentially banking information, potentially your social and, things like that. Because if you make a profit, we have to report that profit to the IRS.
Right.
So we need all that information. And remember, I'm only looking at this from a security perspective. And the thing that I thought interesting, concerning, fill in the blank, was that at no point is there any at no point is there any authentication beyond a username and a password.
And this isn't just for one piece of what in and of themselves are their own platforms that talk to other platforms. You're not prompted to ever raise the bar on the security of authentication.
Right. And our customer is interacting with many of these platforms.
Sure.
And the authentication just feels a little thin for the type of information that's going in there.
This is like a regional bank before they realized that they needed to have something like FDIC to help them be successful long term. And so jumping on board, they also had to do things like 2FA.
Right. So there's, all told, there's like 8 different plugins that are shifting this information back and forth, and none of them have multi-factor authentication. I've been into the back ends of a couple of them. They're like, oh yeah, you can look around. Okay, cool. Well, why are these? Because this is their live account. I'm like, why are all these test users in here? Why would they need information? I can see a test user,
right,
but I don't see 10
right
that have, God level authentication or God level privileges to be able to see all this information. This seems a little excessive. And so it's been an interesting view into how some of these, and these are, I think, relatively small companies that are developing these different pieces of this platform. The thing that I kind of took away from it was how little regard, that's maybe not fair. How little attention they've paid to security.
It's not a security first mindset.
Correct.
And I think in the
or second or third.
Okay, I didn't say that. That was no. I think this is interesting. Having spent time in the software development space, you're asked to build something to do something,
right?
And
they did that. That all works
right.
Great.
And depending on how we ask for something, in return is what you get back. A really good programmer is going to go, you asked for these 9 things. I built them. I gave to you the finished product that does those 9 things. You never asked for security, so I did some things that I know you need to do to make sure that it stays separate from somebody else's account per se, but I didn't do any more than that. And, is that shame on me for not going, I should do security because I built it? Or is it the person? We could go back and forth on that all day long. But the reality is, I don't think this is a foreign concept of what you're uncovering. I think that largely in our space, when someone's building software, especially in the beginning, security is not the first priority, and often because they can't afford security in the pace in which they need to get the product done so they can get paid. Yeah. E-commerce was great like that, right? Before you can go live, you have to have JP Morgan Chase do a 10 days of testing of your environment before they give you the green light to go live. And you're like, wait a second, 10 days, that's too long. We need to go live now. It's like, well, sorry, you can't do transactions until you let them do their test.
Yeah. So we kind of it's like kind of glided to a like, where does this put us at? Because I mean, the thing that you're describing about this story that made me just kind of give the hair on the back of my neck go up was like, we're talking about people putting money into an investment that sounds as compelling as me
choosing to volunteer for a pig butchering scam where I'm only going to put roughly $1 million in hopes that I get more than $1 million back. Disposable income aside or not, we're not anywhere close to the dollars we're talking about here.
Right. So, I don't think that, let me be clear, I don't think that our customer is trying to do anything sketchy.
Well, I'm totally understood.
And in fact, they have gotten pushback from these platform companies.
Sure.
Why are you so concerned about this security stuff? We sent you our one pager on how secure we are because, our thing is hosted on AWS. Like, doesn't make it secure.
I feel like we've had a conversation about Dropbox once upon a time in healthcare. Like, oh yeah, we're secure. Dropbox is secure.
Right. It's hosted here. Well, that doesn't prevent you from making an error. And as we're going through our due diligence, it's like, okay, so when was the last time this code was reviewed by a third party or analyzed by a third party for its how secure it is,
or known vulnerabilities, or any
or
number of
or known vulnerabilities. You're using this library. Oh, we write all our own libraries. I'm like, nobody writes all their own libraries. That's
right. And first off, I said library. So if you wrote a library, awesome. Like, tell me more about it.
Right. So who audited the security of your library? Well,
right.
we're the only ones who use that library. And
right.
Does that somehow magically make it secure? It in some ways feels like security by obscurity.
That reminds me of Papercut. The whole it was a serious issue. Two different environments. One got hit with the exploit and all the paper came out of all the copiers, and the other one did not. The one patched faster than the other, but I would argue that the one that had what sounds like direct connection to the internet is the one that's why they got exploited, not because they had the vulnerability. Which kind of goes back to your point. Just because you're the only one using the library doesn't mean the accessibility to exploit what's there isn't actually there.
Right.
And I think that's what you're saying your client is asking you to uncover. Like, are we sort of being ignorant if we don't do this, and trusting to the fact like, hey, vendor says we're secure, here's our proof. And I think in the genius of the client is that I'm not feeling so good about this because it is in fact only an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and you can only cram so much onto that.
Correct.
And was it double-sided?
No, that was a one.
I guess in the digital world there is no double-sided. It's just one page.
It's just one page, but I mean, I'll give you credit for 2 pages being double-sided.
Sure.
So at the end of the day, they have gone forward and done one deal with this with people they absolutely know, to see how it worked. And now as we approach okay, do we send it out to the wider audience? And there's a lot of stuff I'm glossing over here. The way that the APIs, from the primary piece that gathers the data and processes the data, handing it off to these third parties, those connections, by their description of them, are very secure. They're not exposed to the internet.
APIs, unless they're using old ones, they are relatively secure because they don't just dump data that's not being asked for.
Right.
Okay.
So, at the end of the day, did I say, okay, try it, but understand you have this one major, my biggest concern is that one product that doesn't use multi-factor, the piece that does face the internet.
Yeah.
And, how secure is that? Their document was like 8 pages long.
So let me ask you a question, thinking about the security. And I was thinking about like what CIS says. I think his name's Brian. I can't remember his last name off the top of my head, but he made this comment about when you can't do, say, multi-factor authentication, when you can't change the username, then you had better make the password as complicated and as long as you possibly can. So this goes back to your client, like this is going to be really uncomfortable because now you probably will need a post-it note unless you're saving this in a password manager, because this is not going to be easy. It's not a password you're going to remember, not very easily anyways. And that's the limit of what your current security options are today, right? Like that's, so with what's at stake, is that a risk, everybody's willing to take? And it reminds me, and I say this not to say that this is the same, but in the pig butchering scam, which this is obviously not, there are a lot of very similar pieces to this. Vetting the target as opposed to vetting the opportunity, right? And so once you've determined that they are a good target, well, what are you looking for? Do they have the disposable income? Is this something that would be like, it's not going to make the news because they don't want anybody to know about it?
Right.
And so, and in the pig butchering scam, it's a crypto exchange that allows them to invest money and actually start trading in cryptocurrency and making money. And so largely, no one knows that they're connected to something that's not going to be good for them until they try to pull out too much money. There will be lots of wins early on. So when you told me about like, let's do a small one and see if it's successful, and in my head, I'm going, of course it's going to be successful because it's a small opportunity. Like the economy of scale here hasn't been met for this to be like a big opportunity for someone who has nefarious intentions. And so I guess my point is like the good, bad, the ugly here is like to tread very carefully, right? Because this is a very scary arena for those that have seen what bad people do when they have resources like this at their fingertips.
Right.
Because I could be a potential candidate for this, right? Let's just say it was me. I don't mean me, Chris Johnson, but like, let's just say anybody that has met certain criteria. What if they're a bad actor? What if you found the perfect investor for this and they're the ones that are the bad actor? And now they've gone through this exercise and like, oh man, this is a gold mine.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know that I can answer that.
There isn't an answer yet.
Right.
The answer is it's a possibility, but that's not happened. So that's good.
Yeah. So, it was, I think the takeaway for me was how eye-opening it was, if you will, because, we approach things with a security mindset. Are we perfect at all times? Of course not. Nobody is.
Sure.
But it just feels sloppy.
And I think the takeaway that I have based on what you just said is it makes me think about CIS Control 15, which is third-party service management. And I think that this is an area for us as MSPs, it's often the most difficult because you're not sure what to ask for. And I think in the case of your client is a perfect example of like, what's reasonable for us to ask from a vendor that we can tell is a legitimate organization. They are a company that has good intentions and wants to deliver something that we need and can benefit from. But how do you assess that to make sure that even though the intentions are good, it's like just because I sell you a car doesn't mean that I know everything about the car. And if the car was put on the lot and I'm just told to sell it, doesn't mean I'm selling you a car you should drive.
Right.
And that might be a really bad analogy, but
well, no, I mean, it doesn't mean that the car wasn't bought at an auction and made up of two cars that were welded together.
Right. You got a Geo tracker and a Jeep together in one.
There you go. Hey, why don't these pieces line up?
So the question, I feel like as an MSP once upon a time, but more of like, because you are an MSP, this has had to have a more significant impact to you as an organization, just thinking like, how do we navigate this better for other clients? This is a very extreme example of this, but where does the responsibility and I don't want to say liability because I don't think you have a liability here, but you are being asked to fill some pretty big shoes from a investigate, like security forensics investigation here. You're being asked to do a lot for what limited exposure you're likely still going to have at the end of the day to those vendors.
I mean,
environments.
at the end of the day, we I don't believe have a lot of exposure.
Sure.
Does our customer have a lot of exposure?
Yes.
Yeah, they do, because you can't outsource liability.
But you can ignore it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can ignore it, and you know,
and I don't think your
probably
client
most of the time
is.
you'll get no, I don't think they are. But certainly these vendors could be doing a better job, you know,
In fairness, all vendors can and should be doing a better job. To your point, though, these are low-hanging fruit and sort of in that category of, if it was me evaluating a vendor because of box A not being checked, my answer is already no until I can check that box.
Right.
And, you know, check box, we say don't check boxes, but the reality is I have a checklist of things that I expect from a vendor for a security perspective. Two-factor, SSO, things like that. Those are deal breakers if you don't have them. Like, call me when you do.
Right. Well, and that's kind of where we started with this, and where we ended up was, you know, there's like 4 vendors that provide this sort of product. None of them do it. Regardless of how much money you want to spend, none of them do multi-factor.
It's interesting, you know, we think about like the T-Mobile case, like I can apply for a line of credit to get a cell phone that maxes out at $1,000. Well, let's say it's a $1,500 phone, and really expensive one, and be turned down because my credit score wasn't high enough.
Right.
But me as a person is still valuable, so they hang on to that information.
Sure.
So it makes me think of like all those questions are going through my head. Like,
well, your credit score eventually, hopefully, will get better.
That's what I was thinking. So I was thinking about like this database that's being built that's collecting information on those that today don't meet the minimum, whether it's for the disposable income or some of those other things, but they're still maintaining that database, because what I could envision happening is going, I wonder if we do this on a smaller scale. So what if we said we're going to double the number of investors, cut the dollar per investor in half,
right?
And now you've got a whole new opportunity, but they don't necessarily know that they're being considered in the future.
Right. So my understanding of how this works, that data gets thrown away once they're disqualified, if you will. But
so let's assume that if two-factor authentication is not important because no one's asking for it, then how are they disposing of data that they don't need anymore?
I can't answer that question.
Because complexity in programming, deleting data is far more complicated than adding 2FA.
Yeah.
So, well, I think my eyes have been opened to what I'm going to say is unique, interesting, and
yeah, it's a little different.
It's different.
But I think, I think there's probably, you know, to bring this back to, you know, MSPs and talking about security. I'll bet you there's more of this sort of stuff going on in your client environments than you know.
Maybe even vendors too. Vendors you as an MSP are working with, like how much time are you spending even on the, I'm going to say this as gently as I can, on the surface. Like, check their website out, you know, check some of the little things. I mean, like to your point, like what happens if I go set up a help account, fill in the blank vendor, and it doesn't at least prompt me for things like, when you set up your account, you should go ahead and turn on two-factor, even though the data that you're probably putting in there for their help desk probably isn't all that significant. But why not? Why not reduce the probability of it being compromised? Because odds are username is going to be an email address. Odds are it's going to collect things like first and last name, might even collect your location. Starts to add up real quick.
Right. And the thing that I meant to mention earlier with this, you know, and if you think about who the typical investor is that's making investments of this size,
yeah,
they're not going to be security focused. You know, it's and I don't mean to pick on older people because I resemble that remark now. I mean, I know so many people my age.
You're over 45, I know.
Right. It's like
you don't start out with disposable income, and for the most part, right? So
right. Yeah,
those that are being more suspicious tend to not be in that same category.
Tend to not be in that financial category.
Right.
So yeah, it's a very curious dichotomy. We don't want to make it complicated because they'll forget their password. Okay, well then let them reset their 20-character password every single time if they can't record it in some reasonable way.
And that's fair. I think the real point here is the fact that it's not happening is far greater than you can choose to not turn it on.
Right. Yeah. The option
doesn't exist today. Yeah. So last question I have for you before I let you go, and I can go lose sleep over how vendors potentially are not taking security first approach. What book are you reading right now?
I am not reading any book right now.
Nice. I just started asking that question at random just to see it. It was funny. One of the episodes I did earlier, it's the same book that I'm reading. So I'm reading the Cyber Defense Matrix. And it's a very interesting book, largely because it has pictures, which makes it easier for me to get through it.
Yeah.
It's not pop-up pictures, so it's not quite that sophisticated, but.
So I do listen, though. I do listen to a lot of books, and I thought I'd go in here and look and see what I'm listening to.
That's fair. That's a way of reading.
Is a Radical Candor.
Radical Candor. Got it.
So that's what's on the list at the moment.
Well, there you have it from Eric Hanson, Radical Candor.
Yeah, sometimes that gets me in trouble.
I
already possess that skill.
I bet. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for listening. And if you are out there, have a great week.
Thanks, Russ.